Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you all for being here. Thank you for the introductory remarks and your prepared statements. Your panel represents the heads of the key intelligence gathering officers of the United States government and of the intelligence community, and you're responsible for collecting, analyzing, warning, and operations against terrorism. And you know, we had a chart prepared, and if you look at the chart, it tries to compare. They all start with the president and then down to your level. It seems fraught to me with the opportunity for duplication, replication, and redundancy. And you've all been in the government long enough to know how easy that can happen. And obviously that's a deterioration, that's a waste of time, that's a waste of effort. So our concern is that any reformation of the process post 9/11 must avoid the pitfalls that we've all seen too much in the past. So what I'd like to do, just so we can all kind of sort out where you are, is to see who's responsible, which entity is responsible for which function. And so we can talk this out and see if there is an apparent overlapping or what there is. The real question is the system better than we had before, or is it just different? Will it work, or will it just cause confusion and mix the message and mess the message? And what fine-tuning might be needed as we talk, and as you've been into this for periods of time, and what fine-tuning do you see that might be useful? I mean, we've got this new word now, fusion, but is fusion or is it confusion? That's what we really have to figure out. So to inform us, and I'd like to ask you all to go through a kind of a grim drill, if you will. Let's presuppose that your office is operating in 2001 the way it's operating today. And let's say that the Phoenix memo surfaces. So it would come from the FBI. Okay, would you lead off and tell me what you, with the configuration, with the function, and we've got to be bluntly honest today. Because as we walk through this, let's find out if there's duplication, let's find out if there's any holes. So would you start, sir, and then each of you take a crack at this?
Yes. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm sorry. No, John, I'm sorry.
Alphonse, Costa.
He's been reading your mail. He has your information.
I thought you were pointing at me, Commissioner.
Well, in regards to your first part of the question, does the system work? I think clearly there is an agreement and understanding that the 84 Joint Terrorism Task Forces around the country are the operational arm of the U.S. government when it comes to the investigation of international terrorism within the U.S. So given that confine where, for example, there's 38 different agencies that participate in the National Joint Terrorism Task Force, and over 4,200 federal, state, and local police officers and members of the intelligence community that are part of those task forces, there is a much better system now for the sharing of information at the grassroots level, out in the field where it counts, and then feeding that information back into the constituent agencies as represented on those Joint Terrorism Task Forces. That's an operational perspective. When it comes to the Phoenix EC, and I'll start off by saying that clearly that should have been pushed more aggressively, more vigorously, so there would have been a greater recognition of the possibilities. I think the Commission and the American people who are aware of this realize that was a theory that was posited by an astute agent who said this is a possibility. Now we know that the pilots had already received, the 4 pilots had already received their license by that time. The memo came in, and he was looking at schools and universities that addressed or Middle Eastern males may have been conducting flight training or through these schools and universities. So in that regard, it was an excellent theory that should have been more vigorously pursued. The system we have in place now is a push from each field office to the centralized management of FBI headquarters and to the other agencies that are represented on the National Joint Terrorism Task Force. That push of information like that comes very quickly now to at least my level and then on to the director in a very short matter of time through the twice daily briefings that we provide the director in preparation of him to brief the president every morning. So given that push and the operational aspects that we have implemented, we are in a much better position to take that information. The other side of it is the information technology fix, which I believe Director Mueller will address more in more expansive mode this afternoon. But given the technology fix that is in place, in progress in the FBI now, the visibility of that Phoenix EC would be global in a very short amount of time, as opposed to going to one office, for example, at the headquarters, maybe given to New York because they were heading up the Al-Qaeda investigations. There would be a global visibility of that, and maximum number of eyes and ears could look at that and say, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. Let's take a look at that and see what we can do with it.
Okay, but have you taken it outside of your organization at that point?
Yes, through the JTTFs and the visibility that everybody on the JTTFs has to all those type things. The other aspect is the Terrorist Threat Integration Center, where that information, non-FBI employees have complete access now to, who are members of TTIC, have complete access to all counterterrorism matters of the FBI. So even if an FBI employee did not pick up on that, there's a redundancy built in that the TTIC employees would be able to do that.
Okay. Mr. Pavitt.
Commissioner, we have placed CIA officers from the Director of Operations primarily into approximately 2/3 of the JTTFs that now exist in the United States. And because of that lash up, we're going to have dialogue real time. And that dialogue real time will see my officers communicating with the FBI and also communicating back with me. Since the 11th, as Ambassador Black mentioned yesterday, we have seen an incredible infusion of dollars and people to do what we're doing. CTC, which is a part of what we do in the operations world, is 3 times larger than it was on the 10th of September. In fact, larger still if you count contractor personnel. The CTC budget since 9/11 has increased 1,000-fold since the 10th of September. And because of that, instead of being only in triage mode, and we are still, given the thrust of what's coming at us, in triage mode, but we are vastly able to make sure that we run everything to ground. The director has invited the commission to come to CIA and to sit in one of our 5 o'clock meetings. Perhaps it's presumptuous on my part, but let me invite you as well. Because what happens at that is the fusion that you talked about. It may look confusing, but it is fusion. That memo, I am certain, would have surfaced, and it would have generated, not because it was necessarily really hard source-specific intelligence, but would have generated a very energetic discussion, and we would have started doing things that we didn't do before.
Okay, thank you. General Hughes?
In the context of your question, sir, I represent 180+ thousand people who are involved in all aspects of this activity. Many of them, by the way, participating members of the JTTF structure. I represent the United States Coast Guard, the United States Secret Service, the Transportation Security Agency, the Customs and Border Protection Agency, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the Federal Protective Service, and the Emergency Preparedness and Response Organization, which used to be known as FEMA. I would notify all of those intelligence entities relating to those organizations immediately, as I do now, of any intelligence of interest to them. And in this case, in the case of the Phoenix memo, that would be passed to them immediately as a matter of intelligence interest. I would notify state, local, tribal, major city, and private sector entities, quite often directly, rapidly, by telephone, if indeed there was a need for immediate warning. And I would do that on occasion unilaterally to the Homeland Security elements, but in almost every case I would now do it in partnership with my FBI colleagues. We would do it together in parallel or singularly as a joint effort. I would interact with what is currently my best partner, by the way, in this effort, the Terrorism Threat Integration Center. They perform a tremendous service encompassing the entire global condition with regard to terrorism, a true integrated organization that does integrate and fuse intelligence. And that synergy did not exist before. It does now. I think I'm portraying to you something that does exist now. It can get better in the future as we also evolve into this new form of cooperation. Last but not least, I have to tell you that I would, of course, do what I'm really in business to do, assist the government from the local level and the private sector to the national level with my own intelligence viewpoint, my own analytic view about whatever the intelligence says, an independent voice which is newly created. And I think that's a source of strength in this community. Yes, it can be viewed as duplication or redundancy. In this case, I would call it necessary, vital, important, and realistic redundancy to represent the domestic condition.
Now, General, that's very helpful, but just to follow up, and anybody else pick this up too, at that point, when you have that information, and you've got this vast audience that are your constituents at that point, are you going to make a separate analytical judgment as to whether that's important, valid, prioritized? Will you make that at that point?
Yes, I would. I would give my view in the appropriate professional environment. At some point, we would no doubt reach a conclusion within our community. But I have the authority and the right on behalf of my secretary to give my view.
And I would just add to that, Commissioner, that the FBI now has a strategic analytic component and ability that we did not have prior to 9/11, which should pick that up, but the extra set of eyes and ears that would also see that would lend to that.
Commissioner Feilding,
Yes, sir.
whenever the FBI moves electrons from the field to FBI headquarters, in this case the Phoenix EC or electronic communication, TTIC analysts have real-time access to that. We don't have to rely on the FBI to push it to us. We have full visibility into it. Within TTIC, then, that means that FBI analysts, CIA analysts, analysts from the Department of Homeland Security, the Transportation Security Administration, and other entities represented in TTIC would be able to have read that memo, or will read that memo today, and then will discuss it among themselves and then interact with their home organizations as appropriate. As Mr. Pavitt said and Mr. Pistole, then also there are regular meetings throughout the day to discuss the events of the day in terms of what has come in. Regarding the analysis of that, right now within the U.S. government, the TTIC has the primary responsibility for terrorism analysis at the national level. Each of the other elements has responsibility for doing analysis in support of their respective missions and operational requirements. And so just as General Hughes said, that DHS would do its analysis to make sure that its folks within the broad constituencies of DHS are enabled and empowered, they would help to do that within their department. But at a national strategic level, TTIC, representing the partner agencies, does it on behalf of all of them in an integrated, fused fashion.
Okay. And do you still have, I hope you have more than 123 people assigned to you these days. Do you have?
We have 124.
Oh, good. Let me ask you the question across the panel then. Let's say there's a disagreement as to how important this is. Who's the final arbiter? Or I hope we don't have 4 arbiters.
Let me start off, Commissioner. First of all, we have 124. We are moving out to our new building co-located with the Counterterrorism Division and Counterterrorism Center. At that time, we will have several hundred. When something like this comes in and there has to be an assessment done on it, TTIC will work collaboratively with the partner agencies, interacting with the analysts and the individuals back at the home agencies to put together an assessment. Maybe it's a daily product, maybe it's something that takes longer than a day. And if there are in fact differences of view within the community on this issue, those differences will be reflected in the product. What we're trying to do with this integrated fusion is to not give the policymaker a menu of options and different products that are going in so they have to then do the comparison. What we're trying to do is to bring it together and tell them if there are differences of view within the community, so it provides this one-stop shopping, but reflective of the considered opinions and analytic views of the broad community.
General?
In my case, I'd like to reflect on the senior decision-making groups, the deputies committees, the principals committees, and intimate meetings with the president, where these issues would be taken up. all the views would be aired, I believe. But at that level, decisions would have to be made on operational response. There are always going to be different views in the intelligence community of the United States on what one piece of information means at any given time. We are a very complex organism, but deciding upon it is the province of those leaders who are elected and appointed, who are in position to take operational response actions on it. And we owe them contrary views, alternative ideas. We owe them some clarity. We're trying to give it to them. And by the way, I think often we do give relative community clarity on any given topic. But there are always going to be some issues that can be debated. I think that's good. I think it's a source of strength for our country.
Mr. Pistole?
I believe that in the post 9/11 environment, there is an intentionality and focus of work that would preclude any inaction on something like that. And in the interagency world, to get to your question, I would pick up the phone and discuss it with my partners in the other agencies. And thus far, in the 2 years that I've been involved in this, that is the way we've been able to resolve things.
Mr. Pavitt?
And given that kind of an issue with the Counterterrorist Center, the Office of Terrorist Analysis in CTC would, if you will, if it's a controversial issue or one there's disagreement on, would mix it up with those with whom they should mix it up. My part of that, as the person who runs the spy service, would be, if appropriate, to go out and try and find more information, seek additional information to help get clarity to an issue that might be subject to disagreement.
Thank you all very much. I see that red light's on, but I hope that somebody else on the commission will ask you if you have any problems that you really think still do need fixing. But thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.